Hi, thanks for joining today's meditative talk. Today we'll be talking about the topic of freedom. We'll be using and listening to our hearts and talking about both sides of the freedom story, what was, what could have been, and our opinions around it, to what is happening today and the freedoms of people today. And let's explore, are people fighting for their freedoms? Will people fight for their freedoms or not? So find yourself a nice, comfortable place to sit. I hope you find a book, take some notes, whatever you like to do, write them down, write your thoughts down, leave a comment below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you any sort of comments around the topic or anything that I say that you agree or disagree with. Hit the like button, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and absolutely please share this with somebody else if you feel that they would get some value from it. So freedom. And will people fight for their freedoms? Will you fight for your freedoms? Will I fight for my freedoms? I guess we got to go back into time a little bit to figure that out. And let's go back as far as we know. We got the dinosaurs, and after that, after billions of years, we were told that life on this planet evolved or kept evolving, and then we eventually ended up with hunter-gatherer civilizations. True or not true, I have no idea. I wasn't around, or at least don't remember being around. Let's assume what we've been told is true. We had the hunter-gatherers, and they would live, I believe, with a little bit more freedom of doing what they wanted. They had the flexibility of moving around. They had obviously one probably big goal in mind. That would be food, and looking for food every day. From any of the movies that I've ever seen, no matter if there were hunters and gatherers, there's always a community, and in that community there's always elders, there's younger people, there's always some sort of hierarchy system. And although that is there, people may have voted for what they believe in, and some people maybe didn't get their way, so their freedoms were maybe impeded on, even though they felt that what they truly believed was right. People would have looked for food and had the freedom of maybe trades with other communities within the area, helping other people out, whenever possible, if they had enough food for themselves in the big hunts and whatnot. But I think the life was definitely simpler because there's definitely a lot less technology, a lot less information, a lot less of whatever we live in today. These people would have been not subjected to so many opinions and so many options and everything. Nowadays, anywhere you look, you got a phone in your hand, and people have so much access to so much information that you can look up any topic on freedom, and people will talk about it right now, especially with COVID and all the restrictions and passports all coming in, masks and stuff, and people will talk about the freedoms and people taking away their freedoms or people gaining freedoms because this is happening. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm just saying this is the things that I hear all the time. Not judging one way or the other, I'm just saying, this is kind of what's happening. And people say you're taking away my freedoms, and in both cases, right? People say you're wearing a mask, you're taking away my freedoms. People say I'm not wearing a mask, and if you make me wear one, you're taking away my freedoms to the people. So it's such a diverse conversation, but this is happening now, and I think maybe not masks, thousands and thousands of years ago, but people were having their freedoms also taken away, cavemen and whatnot, thousands of years ago. As life progressed, and kept going for hundreds and thousands of years, things probably changed. People probably moved around. Food was scarce maybe, and they moved to different communities, different parts of the country or a region that they lived in. But eventually, different hierarchy systems began. Kings, queens, mayors, elders who were there. Then you see in collusion, and people would try to break that system and try to take advantage of the system that they're living in. I'm just going off of movies and other things that I've seen. And you see these stories, and that's kind of maybe what we believe it used to be like. And possibly because, I mean, a lot of what was is probably still around, just in different forms. We have people who were told, okay, you're going to be a slave, or you're going into slavery, you're going to be building over here. We need people working in the fields, we need people growing food, we need people doing this and that. And the control was given to the few over the many. And people slowly got their freedoms potentially eroded and taken away from them as they were now doing things for the greater good of the community. So is this good or bad? Having your fighting for your freedoms. Um, some people probably fought for their freedoms and said, I don't want to be forced to do something I don't want to do, while others complied, I believe, and did the things that they felt they needed to do in order for this whole society that they lived in, including their family, their children, their grandparents, whatnot, and the elders to survive generation after generation, maybe passing down stories and whatnot. And as we kept moving through different years and hundreds and thousands of more years forward, and now we are in today's day and age, and there's still the conversation around freedom and people fighting for freedom all over the world. I'll take it back to when I was born. When I was born, and I was born in Canada, so I like to believe I was born into a country that is free, democratic, allows me to think and act and do as I please without hurting anybody else, but still allow me to have the freedoms that someone else fought for. World War One, World War Two, different wars that have happened, different things that have happened even within Canada, where people have fought to have the rights of us Canadians exist the way they do today. Politicians, regular people like you and I, whoever. I mean, tons of people have taken part in the Canadian and the country of Canada, just like they have all over the world. Now, some countries that you may be born into, like my parents were born into India, and the freedoms that lay in India are very different than they were here because the lifestyle and culture is very different out there. People born in China maybe had a different upbringing because of the supposed communist system that they have. Is it communist or non-communist? I don't know. They just call it a communist system. They say it's different than the one we have. That's democratic. You label it the way it is, and that's what we're told it is. We're told one is bad, one is good. In the end, I'm not the judge of the system. I am just saying the fact that the freedoms that we were born into in certain places are very different than the freedoms people are born in other places. I'm not trying to judge who's born in the right place or not. I do look at it though as the people who have gotten their freedom sometimes do take their freedom for granted. And the people who have been born into a system where their freedom was essentially stripped from them from the day they were born also sometimes take their freedom for granted. I believe a lot of times people don't know what freedom really is. We're told what freedom is. We have our Charter of Rights, our freedoms that are written within there. We have freedom of expression and saying what we want and doing what we want. But what is real freedom that you would fight for? I've been kind of watching this pandemic unfold and really listening to people talk about freedoms and how their freedom is being taken away, while other people all over the world comply to whatever the government that they've helped put into control is saying to them, and they comply to that freedom. being taken away from them. Then you have places all over the world that are implementing new rules to take away freedoms and not allow people to go into different places, like in France and maybe Italy now as well. In vaccine passports in different countries are starting to come along, and they're supposedly, I'm not trying to get banned from YouTube, but supposedly these vaccines and passports here are being put in place to help people stay in a community that's still going to allow economies to function. So many people are not necessarily fighting for their freedom, they're just complying, even in free countries like Canada and United States, where you're born into a society of freedom with a lot more silver spoon kind of growing up versus places where not a lot of people have silver spoons and money. They're born into more poverty. There's a lot more people living poor probably in the world than rich in this world. So the people that are poor are definitely, I find, a lot more under control than the people that are supposedly rich. And over the last 19 months, I've just kind of watched this whole pandemic unfold. And obviously, I only know a sliver of really what's going on. There's so much information, there's just too much information to really make a sound decision on what is really going on anymore. Plus, you got the opinions of everybody else around what is being broadcasted by the media or on social media, and now you got people putting out their opinions on it as well, and trying to back it up with whatever information they can find, either on the media or social media or the opinions of other people to back up their own opinions. I've seen rallies and I've seen protests and I've seen people being arrested. I've seen people rioting, and I think people are trying to gain their freedoms and at least make their voices be heard when it comes to wanting to have their freedom. But many people are still complying, no matter what, to what the government is wanting them to do. I know yesterday the Alberta government, and yesterday being September 15th, today being September 16th, 2021, the government of Alberta released some new rules. We still have a mask mandate in effect. They're asking people to stay 2 meters away or 6 feet away from each other. They've also now implemented other rules, gathering and rules, restaurants, gyms, indoor-outdoor gathering rules. I won't go over that, but you can definitely check out the Alberta websites that talk about it, and they can definitely go through that and you can read about it. It's probably no different than a lot of different countries, and they are now also implementing that the business owners and the businesses really start implementing the vaccine passports and the mandatory passports or allowance of people into the establishments of these business owners. I found it funny that the government has to put the onus on the businesses to help control the population and the movement and the freedom that people do enjoy. Now they've tried to put somebody else in charge to kind of help mandate or facilitate, I guess is the word, facilitate the rules that they would like to do, and potentially start taking away additional freedoms, even of the vaccinated and unvaccinated. I'm not saying anything against it, don't care one way or the other what you are, if you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, doesn't bother me. What I really want to do is just get the point across I'm trying to make. I do feel that our freedoms are being taken away one day by one day, and I feel that most people don't care, in the sense, because they prefer to continue to follow what the rules are and will continue to comply to those rules, because most people's freedoms are being taken, they take it for granted. They don't see their freedoms as big as that they should be seeing them. I guess because those freedoms, quote unquote, were born into them, they're just an expectation. So you feel that you still have freedom because you're in a country like mine, Canada, where life really is much better than potentially some of these other countries out there. I think there's 180 or 91 countries out there in the world, and I would say the standard of living within Canada and the freedoms that we enjoy of movement and the ability to get food and shelter and hot water is definitely different than many of the countries in the world, and definitely blessed to have that freedom that is available to me and options of just a great life. I'm able to record this video sitting in a room where many people don't even have a room to sit in, or that room has to be shared with so many more people, so they would never even be able to make a video like this potentially. So definitely, I enjoy my freedoms and potentially don't riot or protest because I know what I have right now versus potentially what is trying to be taken away from me at this moment in time. I do feel that people will fight for their freedoms if eventually their freedoms have been taken away enough that it actually starts to impact them. But just like the old adage of putting the frog in warm water, if you leave the frog in warm water over time, as that water warms up, the frog will not jump out. It'll actually just sit in the warm water. But if you put the frog in a boiling pot of water, it'll actually jump out of it as it hits the surface of the water. It'll actually jump out because it's too hot. So it's just like us, right? We're not being thrown into a boiling pot of water. We're actually being slowly climatized to the hot water or the environment that we're currently living in as it pertains to COVID, passports, mask mandates, restrictions. Again, this is just my opinion. It's not science. There's no science behind it. It's just an opinion of what's actually going on as I see it. What do I think will actually make people fight for their freedom? I used to work at the bank for many years. I've worked at 3 different banks for probably a total of almost 10 years in total. And one thing I've always noticed, people will stand up and fight and voice their opinion when their money is being impacted. Not necessarily when their freedom is being impacted, but when their money is being impacted. So I believe people will fight for their freedom only once their money is impacted. I do not believe people will necessarily always fight for freedom up front or first. The reason I say this is just look around you. So when there is like the banks maybe limit the amount of money they're going to give out to the citizens, people line up, people riot, people protest. I believe it was just in one of the countries, I apologize, I think it's El Salvador. I might be wrong in the country. They just introduced Bitcoin as legal tender, and they were saying in the news that people are protesting against the Bitcoin being legal tender. So people will naturally, anything that they have to work hard for, they will protest for to protect. People didn't have to work hard for their freedoms. People's freedoms were given to them if you're born in a first world country and supposedly given to them, where people who are born in, let's say, a communist country versus a capitalistic country, I should say, or society, communists already take your freedoms away from you, or same as socialism. From what I understand, your freedoms, your money, and everything is kind of taken away from you in the sense that the greater good is usually more important than the singular good. So when do I think people will stand up and fight? As soon as the governments realize that the vaccine passports potentially do not work in controlling the virus or the society that they're trying to control. I believe at that point they will move on to trying to control the money. And once you try to control the money that people so work hard for, the blood, sweat, and tears, pour time into that's when people will really stand up and riot and protest and stand up for what they believe in. Until that happens, I don't think people really will stand up for their own freedoms because, again, they don't know what it takes to get freedom. They only realize what it is to be in supposed freedom. It's like living in the matrix and not even realizing you live in the matrix. You're actually just living in the computer program the whole time. So you don't really notice everything around you happening because it's just normal. So these are just some of my thoughts around fighting for your freedom, what we used to do to how we fight for our freedom right now, or when we will potentially fight for our freedom in the future. Let me know what you thought about this talk. I really try to look at it from different perspectives and different thoughts on when I really do think. These are just something that had come to me while I was having a conversation with somebody else today. And it's just something that kind of popped in my mind and I really wanted to talk about it and just kind of let the ideas free flow and bring those out on video. And I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a comment and of course hit the like button. Share this video with somebody else, and I'll see you on the next talk. Thank you so much.